Welcome to Coffee with Charlie, a series by Figma where I get to sit down with the designers behind the design systems at lots of different teams and companies. We'll take a peek behind the scenes and inside their Figma files and learn how they have their design systems set up and what makes them unique. I'm your host, Charlie. I'm the creative director at ConvertKit, and I also make design videos over on my own YouTube channel, Charlie Marie TV. I love speaking to other designers about how they get their work done. So without further ado, let me introduce today's guest, Chris Pearson. Chris is a multidisciplinary designer from the UK, and he's the design lead on the design systems team at Condé Nast, which is a huge global multi-brand publisher. They're behind publications like The New Yorker, Wired, Vogue, Architectural Digest, and in this episode, I talked to Chris about how they've gone about setting up a design system to handle all those different brands and web platforms. Let's get into it. Welcome, Chris. I'm excited to talk to you today and get to know the design system at Condé Nast. Let's start by talking more about it, because Condé Nast has so many brands. So given that there are that many, when did this system come about? How did you know you needed it and decide to implement one?
So because Condé Nast has so many different brands and they have editorial teams all over the world, until quite recently, we basically had a unique website for each of those brands in each of those markets. So to give you an example, Vogue had over 11 different websites, one for each of the different markets around the world. So really from a business point of view, that's not a very efficient or effective way to work. So having all of that in one place means, we could start measuring data globally. We can start iterating, creating a feature once and then being able to roll it out at scale globally.
Let's show the people how it all works and how you've set up this centralized system for all these brands.
Sure. Okay, so let's dive into Figma. And I think probably the two folders worth talking about are components and brand identities. So I'll jump into components. So we organize the components around these five, and I'll look at one of these folders. So you can see in here. So first of all, we've got the cover template. We've got a table of contents. Oh yeah, it makes a difference, particularly when you're working with so many files. It does actually really help to quickly identify what's what. So we've got this table of contents, which just gives us an overview of what's in here, and
nice.
As we're building this up, it just gives us a quick view of what's in progress and what's complete. So we can see this is relatively complete now. But I'll just look at any of these components to show you the structure we have. So most of the components will follow this, something pretty similar to this. So first of all, we have some documentation. So we're really trying to push the idea that, we start with the documentation and just make it really clear what the intent is for this component, like how it should be used, how it will behave responsively, if there are any variations, like what those variations achieve and what they do. And then, we'll show the component, but we'll also show things like what tokens are used on the component. So every element of a component will have a typography token applied to it and a color token applied to it. And the other thing I should say actually is all of these components are built completely agnostic of brand. So we start with this kind of foundational brand agnostic component, which then can be themed with the brand identity layer that I'll...
Let's see this in action with that theme layer you talked about. How would you theme a component to a different brand?
So brand identity is basically what we call the theme layer across the design system. So every brand at Condé Nast will have a brand identity file. So you can see there's quite a lot of them.
There is.
There's a lot of brands, and each of these represents that theme layer. So if I go into Architectural Digest, so here we are. So this is the brand identity file. So again, we've got a cover slide just to help users identify what's going on. And then we've also got a color identity. So the color identity is basically the palette. This is just saying, here are the colors that I want to use for this brand. And we've got something very similar for type identity. So this is just, here are the fonts that I want to use for this brand. But then we've also got color tokens and type tokens.
Cool. Let's see this in action then.
I know that you're waiting to see. So So yeah, this is a regular component. We've got in here all of the tokens applied to it. And if I just scroll to the top, you can see that this is using the default brand identity. So if I wanted to theme this for any other brand, I could do it manually. I could go in here and look through this list and find for a different brand identity, let's say Vogue, the equivalent token for that BI. But we've also got this cool plugin that we developed in-house called the brand swap plugin. So if I fire this up, what this does is basically automate that process. So if I wanted to swap this for, let's choose Vogue actually, because that's what I was looking at. So if I was working on a Vogue team and I wanted to use this component for my template or flow, whatever I'm working on, I could take this component, put it into my page, use the brand swap plugin, and you can see what's happened here is it's basically, as if by magic, change all the values for those tokens for the given brand. So if I try another brand here, let's try Architectural Digest. You can see the same thing happen. So it just really speeds up that process. Because we have so many brands, because we have a lot of components, it just means rather than having to maintain a set of components for every brand that would just become absolutely insane, we can just maintain one set of components, which then have that theme layer applied to it.
That's cool. That's a really smart system to have in place, and I can definitely see how that would help with managing all these different brands that you have. Let's dive in a little more into the challenges of running such an expansive multi-brand system. What have been some of the challenges you've had to overcome to get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Condé Nast it is really the scale of it. So many brands, so many components. It's grown, really quickly. So we just have a lot of things, and I think the number of sites is just, I don't know of any other system that is attempting to have a system for that many sites. I think next year there's like another 40 sites in the pipeline to be onboarded onto the single system. So that in itself is all about standardization and looking at these different sites, what their needs are from a product point of view, and streamlining all of those different needs into one set of components. But also we've quite recently kind of shifted back to giving some brands a little bit more autonomy and a little bit more freedom to go off and iterate for a given brand. So for instance, the high profile brands like the New Yorker and Vogue will have a dedicated product team, that are just looking really deep into the needs of that audience and what they need to do to improve those sites and improve the metrics and improve the engagement and so on. There's just like these two almost conflicting needs of the system. So it's like, what do we, how do we support both of those with one system that also needs to support so many sites and so many different brands.
That's really interesting, because you want the design system to be flexible enough to allow that creativity and to allow brands to have that autonomy to be improving the thing that they're working on. But you also are wanting everything to still be streamlined, right? To fit together, to make sense in the system, to reduce, duplicated components and things like that. Like say someone, as you said, working on the New Yorker, designs a new component that's going to solve a problem that they have on the New Yorker site. What is the process like for contributing that component into the wider system?
So I think the best approach for us is just to create, really good guidelines, create a framework and a process for teams to go through. And as much as possible, just encourage teams to be thinking with this, brand agnostic view when they're starting out in the process rather than at the end. And I think it's, there's, naturally there will be some outcomes that are slightly more bespoke and slightly more tailored for a brand. And if they're not adopted by other teams, that doesn't really matter too much. But what I do want to avoid is too many solutions to exactly the same problems.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it as interesting as I did to hear about how Condé Nast have set up the system to handle such a wide array of brands. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and perhaps in the comments you could recommend what company you'd like to see inside the design system of next, and maybe we can make that happen. All right, thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.